Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Welcome to The Money Factor. I'm Richard Naylor, your host. Today's topic is bus transportation in the Capital District. Our guest is appropriately Raymond Melleady, Executive Director of CDTA. Excited to talk to him. I know that Colonie is in line for some new services. And well, let's meet him and get started.
Thank you, Richard. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for being on the show, Ray.
It's great to be here.
Let's start with a little bit about your background. When we were chatting, you mentioned a couple other cities, so I know that this is relevant.
It is. I started out my career in the city of Philadelphia, actually servicing buses for Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority. Worked my way up through the mechanical ranks as a technician and a number of positions in maintenance management and technical training. Eventually worked myself into a position of director of maintenance, overseeing a number of their diesel fleet maintenance operations. And about 4 years ago was offered an opportunity to come up to the Capital Region to head up operations, and just recently appointed by the Board of Directors to oversee the organization. So my life has been in mass transportation, and it's something that I've come to know very well.
That's interesting. And so you really didn't have to be sold on the value of the bus as a part of what we might be able to create in terms of mass transportation?
No, not at all. I'm a big believer in what mass transportation does today, but also what it can do in terms of the ability for the Capital Region to provide mobility options for the future of this region.
And an option means we could go different ways, but I know with the gas prices today, people are maybe thinking a little more about options.
They are. I think people are more and more aware of what mass transportation can do in terms of convenience and cost effectiveness in getting around the Capital Region. CDTA has certainly seen more ridership today than we saw 3 and 4 years ago, and I think a lot of that's attributed to people looking at ways to access transportation options that are more convenient, cost effective, and certainly the other thing that I would point to here is our ability to impact the environment. CDTA provides transportation options that are much better for the environment than a single occupant vehicle.
I know we've known forever that mass transportation is a good thing, but then we still have to motivate each little individual rider to actually make that choice, and that sounds like a challenge.
It is. The relevance of any transit system is founded in ridership, and ridership is influenced, among other things, by convenience, reliability, and our ability to compete with the automobile. So when you take a look at the Route 5 corridor, for example, the Route 5 corridor carries a significant portion of our ridership in between Schenectady and Albany. We are doing things today to make that ride much more competitive with the automobile in the years to come, and I think that'll continue to make a difference in our ridership numbers.
We always cover a number of topics, kind of crisscross back and forth. It's almost impossible not to. But before we get into some details, let's just kind of get an idea about the breadth, how large is and how extensive is the bus system.
CDTA is a 4-county operation. We operate in Albany, Schenectady, Rensselaer, and Saratoga counties. We run 55 routes, and we carry close to 13 million boardings a year, trips per year. And that's been a growing trend for the organization. That works out to roughly 40,000 boardings for every weekday. So it's a significant mobility option for residents of the Capital Region.
It really does impress me with that number. I think I've always had a bit of a, may I say, parochial image. And I think Albany County, and then I see a bus somewhere else, and I'm thinking, why'd they go all the way over here? But it's the regional transportation system.
It is. And because of that, we provide connections between the counties and give people options that wouldn't exist if we were a single county operation.
Now, CDTA hasn't existed forever. I suppose buses existed before, but how did this system develop a little bit? Not that we have to go into a great deal of history, but
CDTA was created by an act of legislation in 1972, and it's really an assembly of what were formerly privately operated bus organizations.
So perhaps from different cities.
Yes, United Traction Company, for example, Schenectady Transportation System. So CDTA really was developed out of a number of privates that were not in a good position at the time, and a lot of that was attributed to the expansion of highways in the region that made bus transportation less attractive to people who found the automobile to be a more appropriate means of getting around.
Well, it's certainly a luxurious means if you're the only one on the road. but today, when you're sitting in traffic, you might not always feel that way.
Well, that's exactly the point of where CDTA is today in terms of development plans. The reality is we can no longer build ourselves out of traffic. We have to use the existing street and highway infrastructure we have more efficiently, and mass transportation is certainly a solution in that discussion. When you take a look at Central Avenue and State Street and Albany Shaker Road and Wolf Road, we're not going to add lanes to those roadways. We're going to have to rebuild them in a way that allows future generations to use them more efficiently, and I think mass transportation will be a big part of that.
I think we need to work towards that, and so I'm really happy that you're here and that you're working on ways to make this attractive to more and more people.
We are. Things like bus rapid transit on the Route 5 corridor I mentioned earlier. You take a look at the commute between Schenectady and Albany, and things that we can do to make that more attractive to the end user are passenger amenity, bus shelters in key areas. But also today, that corridor has 72 signalized intersections, 90 bus stops. By working with the towns and counties, we can actually put in things like traffic signal priority that gives the approaching bus an advantage in triggering a green light to give that bus some kind of a time advantage in the commute. Also things like a queue jumper, which is nothing more than an additional lane that gives the bus the ability to go around traffic, say at Wolf Road and Central Avenue, and then jump out ahead of traffic or preempt a green light there, making that commute what is today a 68-minute commute, maybe reducing it by 15 minutes and giving people a reason who have automobiles maybe to park their cars and board the bus.
Well, that is significant. If I were looking at 15 minutes and I were flying to Los Angeles, it would mean nothing. But if I think of all the 15 minutes that I would be spending between now and the next few years, if I were doing this twice a day, that's one of those things where you add it up and you find out, well, you spend a year brushing your teeth or something, one of these kind of funny things. But 15 minutes sounds like a lot.
Minutes make a difference in attracting new riders to the service. And CDTA is doing a lot to make sure that we work with, it's just not new vehicles, and we can talk about new vehicles in just a few minutes. It's also making sure we work with the towns and counties to make sure that streets and roadways are developed in such a way that gives transportation somewhat of a level playing field in competing with the automobile, because the reality is we have to do something to give people a choice so that you don't have backups on the corridors and highways in the capital region.
Now, you mentioned some of these really neat features that I've never seen. When are those coming?
Well, we are in phase 1 of the Bus Rapid Transit project, and what people will see today are new styled vehicles. They will see what we call the BRT, Bus Rapid Transit Design Vehicles. It's a new image, aerodynamic design. It's a diesel-electric hybrid vehicle, which is a vehicle that's powered by both diesel and battery power, depending on what's more efficient at the moment. From an efficiency standpoint, that saves CDTA about 1 mile per gallon. To put that into perspective, per bus we expect to save about 2,000 gallons of diesel fuel per year. So it's significant in terms of savings for the organization, but it's also significant in terms of what we can do to help our footprint on the environment. So CDTA is looking at that.
Now, just to give some perspective, 1 mile per gallon doesn't sound like a lot if I'm driving a Prius, but what does a bus that's in, let's say, what's the worst case scenario for a diesel bus?
Well, conventional diesel today, on average, we get about 3.8 miles per gallon.
So
It's significant. So you basically, you gain a full mile per gallon, and it's a significant impact to our bottom line. Now, that technology is more expensive up front, but we believe it's a worthwhile investment, not only on the savings in fuel, but also because environmentally it's the right investment to make. So that's really the first phase of the project, new vehicles, new look. The second phase is you will begin to see new stations along Central Avenue and State Street corridors. And then along with that, you'll see in the stations new amenities, real-time information. It's no longer, we are investing in new schedules and access to information on our website, but ultimately you'll be able to walk into a bus shelter and take a look at a computer screen that will tell you not the scheduled time for that vehicle, but the actual time that vehicle is expected to arrive. Kind of a countdown. You know, your next bus will arrive in 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, and then you'll see it at that point.
Fantastic.
So we're using technologies to really enhance the customer's perspective of the operation.
I know from psychology texts and things like that that the perception of time varies by how you're feeling and what you're experiencing. And so in a grocery store they may put television, and looking at that television, the time goes faster. So some of these things probably really also give people a better time sense. They're comfortable.
They are, and I think even within the vehicle you will see a number of changes in the future of transit. It's only a question of when, not if, but ultimately I believe you will see amenities in the vehicles you don't see today. I think people will have access to internet. If they have a laptop and they're riding into work in the morning, have the ability to actually certainly we don't have that today, but I believe you will see that in the future. And I think you will see real-time advertising. And again, there are visions for the organization where businesses and passengers who are riding on the vehicle can look at a TV screen and not only see the news, but also as they pass different establishments on that corridor, those establishments may have the ability to advertise on that TV screen, so it's real-time, real location advertisement. So it's really interesting what technology is doing for our business in terms of enhancing the customer experience.
Absolutely, that's great. Let's look at, from a practical point of view, you're trying to achieve something that needs to be done. We need to be able to move people around cheaper. We need to figure out how we can have enough roads, enough ways for people to get to work and get to where they need to go without being totally frustrated and sitting waiting for an hour every day. What kind of, I guess, what's the demographic today of the people using the bus? And we could go a little bit into the reasons why people don't, and how we're overcoming some of the problems. I dealt with them already a little bit, but maybe we can kind of dig into this one.
Well, 70% of our riders today are riders that are going to and from work. The remaining 30% are discretionary trips or trips to a doctor's office and that sort of thing. So the majority of our market today is the rider that's going back and forth from work. Certainly the challenge for CDTA is balancing emerging opportunities with existing capacity. So we do have a growth strategy, but we see our market penetration, like most transit properties, is about 5% in the region. So there's a tremendous opportunity to attract today what are discretionary riders. And the way you do that is you make transit a competitive alternative. You begin to take a look at the I-87 backups or the backups on Central Avenue or I-90. If you begin to develop systems that make mass transportation a viable alternative, where whether it's a dedicated right-of-way where that bus has the advantage, you will begin to see more and more people park their car, board a bus, and get to where they need to go. And I think that's what you'll see in the future of this region and other regions throughout the country.
Now, I know one group that is really interested in this are people who open a business somewhere. Wolf Road is a good example. You have people working at LL Bean. Well, some of those people don't drive, and they're going to need to be able to get to work. So one set of customers that I've dealt with are the business people who need to get their employees there. What do you do to work on that market?
CDTA has close to 100 corporate partners. We deal directly with organizations and offer them benefits to their employees. Often, our corporate swiper program offers pre-tax transportation benefits to employees, and we're seeing that aspect of our operation grow. And that brings up a great point. I think people often view mass transportation as within the text of what's in it for me. And the reality is mass transportation, whether you use it or don't, access to jobs is one example, but it is advantageous to the region in a number of fronts. Congestion mitigation, we talked about access to jobs, but also real estate values. I think more and more we are seeing, and if you begin to look 30 and 40 years out, properties located around transportation, developing transportation hubs will have a value because it's access to mobility. But it's also safety, energy independence, air quality, mobility, and economic development that make mass transportation a wise investment for any region. So access to jobs is certainly something we see as a market for CDTA, and we're seeing growth in that market.
Now, maybe there are a couple details that would be helpful in terms of the prices and what kind of products that you would offer specifically to businesses. What do they cost?
Well, what we do is work with businesses to offer a discounted rate. Generally, it's a 10% discount for their employees, but it's also pre-tax. So there's benefits to doing that, but it also, and these are.
But that's on top of the product, also, right? I mean, you have. I don't really know what they are, but I know you can lump together a number of rides in different ways.
There are several options. Let me start with the base fare, and this is, I think, it needs to be mentioned. To ride CDTA for one trip today is $1. And we view that as a bargain. We view that as very convenient and cost-effective for riders. To ride all day, you put $3 in the fare box, and you get to ride our system all day throughout the capital region. And that is also certainly an attractive option for folks. But you can also buy discounted, longer-term, what we call monthly swipers. A 5-day monthly swiper is $36. So basically, you can ride 5 days for the entire month for $36. A 7-day swiper with unlimited access is $44. So we have a number of discounted options for people who ride regularly, and we also, folks with disabilities and seniors ride at half fare. So we like to advertise that as another option for accessibility for folks that need transportation in the region.
That sounds like a good one, because we are working with senior citizens, and there are places on Wolf Road. They're contemplating a new facility near the mall, and people who may be contemplating not driving, being a bit dangerous, and relatives, it's really important that senior citizens have access to groceries and being able to go to theater and things.
They do, yeah, and you take a look at the population trends across the country. Capital region is no different, and more and more people are outliving their ability to drive, which certainly gives transportation a challenge, mass transportation, but it's also an opportunity for growth, and we view it as a positive opportunity.
Okay, so we looked at business people, senior citizens, workers, and I know that you'd like to attract, excuse me, more people. What about people who just feel that we ought to help the environment, but we've never really figured out why we should take the bus? We can afford the gas. We don't like paying it. But we'd really like to take a bus if we maybe figured out how to do it. I know you're trying to make it easier. I went to your website. I found a lot of bus schedules. Anything else going on to help us understand how I would get there, how I would get started using a bus?
In the not too distant future, we're doing a number of things to make it easier for folks that have, for the most part, grown up in a society dominated by the automobile. New schedules with easy to read print and color and landmarks to make it easier for folks to navigate the system, but also on our website in the not too distant future. By the end of this year, in fact, you will have a trip planner where you can go onto our website, type in your origin and type in your destination, and we will provide an itinerary that includes what routes to take and what time those routes will be there, again, to make it easier for people who have not traditionally used transit to get to where they need to go. So we're doing a number of things to really make it more accessible to folks who have not traditionally used transportation. You're getting
to be so much easier to navigate, I guess. I used to wish that there was a large map. I think this was 3 or 4 years ago. I said, do you have a large map? I'd like to see the whole system. And the answer was, no, but we're talking about it. And now you gave me this wonderful map. You can see We can put it up on the screen. You can see all the connections everywhere in the Capital District, and it's a nice thing to have.
It is, and there was a lot of, certainly a lot of efforts to develop that, but that will be updated and available on our website also. So not only in the paper version, if that's the reader's preference, but also on the website, if you can access the web, you'll be able to zoom in onto a specific county or a specific route, and we're making improvements to that all the time.
Sounds like you're almost competing with Google here.
We are.
And
Well,
they can't do that with the bus system.
and in many properties are partnering with Google, and
Really?
not what has traditionally been maybe a competitive process is now becoming a partnership where their maps are being updated routinely, and at some point I would envision you being able to log into Google and pull up bus stops throughout the region for our transit organization, like you can today for other transit properties.
Wow, that's nice. There were a few other things that I really needed, I guess, to understand in order to use the bus. And one is I have a car. And I'm used to it. You know, if you drive your car, you know that once in a while you'll turn off because that's where you've always turned off. But you were really going to the theater, and you were supposed to keep going straight. So we're really creatures of habit. How can I use my car to get to the bus? You know, in some big cities, I'll take a bus to get to the metro. Probably not the biggest city, but medium-sized cities that have a smaller. How can I get to some of the places where I need to get to take a bus?
We're currently working with a number of stakeholders throughout the region in developing park and rides, which is combining the access to the automobile with access to the mass transportation network. And those park and rides will be located, we have a number located throughout the area already, but you'll see more and more located to give people who have traditionally used their car to get to a final destination to have an option to park at a location and board a bus to make it more convenient to get to their final destination, where you can eliminate some of the congestion that currently exists in some of the downtown urban cores and also on the primary corridors in those areas.
How can people find out about those?
They're available on our website,
So
and
also
as we develop them, we're certainly looking at, and again, when you talk about best practice and you take a look at some of what areas outside of this country have done, where transportations have been developed within very, very densely populated cities, CDTA doesn't really have the benefit of a dense population. We have some very, very scattered population areas, and I think in order to get people that have lived in those areas for a long time and owned cars, give them access to mass transportation, you have to develop park and rides along some of the corridors that exist today, and I think you'll see them developed in the future, and that information will be available on our website at that time.
Now this just jumped into my mind, and I know I've seen on the front of some of your buses bicycle racks. But what if 4 people had a bike? Is there any idea that we could have a bike ride to, you know, a place where I could leave my bike and then get on the bus? Because if I could ride the bike a little bit, I might do it rather than having to walk or not really needing to take a car.
Well, by having bike racks on buses, we've expanded our geographic coverage. People that would not have had access to mass transportation because of the distance from their home today can ride a bus to a bike stop, mount their bike.
So there are bike stops near bus stops?
In some cases, there are areas to secure bikes, but that's more of a local decision. You may see more and more of that in the future, but it's limited today. What we've done as an organization is put bike racks on all of our buses, so that if somebody wants to ride their bike to a bus stop. Now, I've seen 2 bikes on a bus. In fact, I saw it earlier today on Central Avenue. So it's becoming more and more common for people, especially in the nice weather, to use their bikes to get to where they need to go. But I would imagine as more and more focus is applied to environmental issues and concerns, you will see bike racks throughout the region available to folks, and it's something that we don't necessarily have control over, but we can put bike racks on our buses, and we've done that.
So that gives people more options. They can look at the overall map, they can go to the computer, they can try to figure out, now if I were going to take the bus, here's what I would do. Because that I've never gotten past that point. You know, I live about 2 miles from the nearest bus route, so it didn't occur to me that there were options. Any other things that might be coming in the future in terms of how people might access buses?
Well, I think you're going to see more and more of a focus on providing non-traditional modes of transportation to not only businesses but people. I think when you're talking again about low population density areas, suburban areas, you have to look at things like van pools and car pools, and that satisfies where people have similar origin to destination commutes with similar times. And I think if you do it right and you incentivize it the correct way, people have other options. The idea is to really take people out of that single occupant vehicle. A van, for example, can take 12 cars off the highway or the roadway. You know, a car can, to a lesser extent, have the same impact. So you begin to look at those options for organizations with similar times, and I think we can truly make a difference in congestion in the region.
So now we find the bus. We have to be there at the right time. Let's talk about schedules a little bit. How do we use them? How do we know what they are?
All of the schedules for our routes are available on the website, and the schedules have primary time points on them, and we ask people to get to the bus stop 5 minutes ahead of its scheduled time. And
so that's like a safety...
kind of a safety cushion for folks. And the time points, in addition to the time points, CDTA has roughly 3,000 bus stops throughout the capital region. So you won't just see on the schedule you'll see the time points, but in reality there's far more stops than that on a given route.
Okay, so you look at the schedule and you see big numbers. We can put that up again so people can see that, like 1, 2, 3, 4.
You will.
But then there, in between those, there are
Stops.
other stops.
Correct.
Okay.
What you see on a schedule is your primary stop points, your primary stop locations, your time points, and in between there are the sub-stops.
Sometimes you don't want to take advantage of people, and it seems like CDTA doesn't mind. We have patrons who come to the library and they say, would you call CDTA and have them send a bus? Which the first time I heard it, I thought, send a bus? Of course, I didn't say that out loud. Send a bus? I'm sure I'll call. Where's the number? But then the bus came. I was astonished.
You're referring to our either our fixed route service on the 31 or our STAR service. Our STAR service is a curb-to-curb service. It's in addition, it's kind of an overlay of our fixed route services, and folks that live within 3/4 of a mile of an existing fixed route who cannot access fixed route, we provide STAR service for. It's really a curb-to-curb, door-to-door service that gets people to where they need to go who cannot access either by way of maybe there isn't a sidewalk that would enable them to navigate the way to the bus stop, or some other reason that would prevent them from accessing fixed route services.
So is that primarily for handicapped people? I know people use it at the library. They're not handicapped, but is there a difference? There's STAR, and then is there another thing for people who are actually handicapped?
Well, the STAR is the service that we use to provide transportation for folks that couldn't access fixed route. There is an eligibility process, so it is for folks with disabilities.
I see.
And in many cases, those folks will also use our fixed route, and again, we provide that option to them for half fare. So they use a mix of both services.
I think we've covered most of the fundamental things. Let's go back just kind of to wrap up. Why should I take the bus?
Well, I think you should take a bus for a number of reasons. I think when you take a look at congestion in our region, everybody that boards the bus makes a difference. It's an impact to air quality. It's making an environmental statement. It is economically attractive. It's the right thing to do for any number of reasons. It's certainly cost effective. I mean, when you take a look at the cost of gas today and what we offer in terms of transportation options, it does give you the ability to save money in your transportation options. So it's to summarize my point, I think it's the right thing to do for a number of reasons.
Well, I was driving to work and I saw one of your new buses this morning, and I thought, that's snazzy. You know, I wouldn't mind getting on there. It almost looked like fun.
You know, we've done a lot to improve the image of CDTA, and I think for a long time, transit properties across the country, our image has lagged reality. We are seen as a low-tech, needs-based public service by a lot of folks in the region and in the country, and in reality, we are a major component of transportation infrastructure in this region. And you take a look at some of our investments in the diesel-electric hybrid and high-tech equipment, and hydrogen will power our vehicles at some point in the future. We are a high-tech organization, and I think the new image will certainly help us to improve what people and their perceptions of our organization are.
I have a brother-in-law who works in the Louisville Transit Authority. I'm not sure if that's the initials or not, but I was impressed when they bought 2 of the hybrid buses. And I saw on your website you were looking to buy next year 22.
We're buying actually 23 to be exact. There are 22 diesel-electric hybrids. Today we have 6. And there's an additional low-floor diesel-electric hybrid that we will use for the Northway Express. We also provide service in between Saratoga and Albany County on the Northway Express vehicles. So you'll see 1 low-floor diesel-electric hybrid added to that fleet, and the remaining order will be used throughout the other 3 counties.
Well, I hope that people get an idea that this is not your father's bus system, or however they put that. This is not your grandfather's Chevrolet or Oldsmobile. This is really the future.
It is. I think, and this is an important, when you take a look at where we stand today, there are cities in this country that come to a standstill 2 times each day because 20 years ago, I think they undervalued the difference that mass transportation can make. And I think in the capital region, we have a window of opportunity today to make it truly different for our kids in the future, and we should take advantage of that, and I expect we will.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Ray, for being on our show.
Thank you for having me, Richard.
Perhaps we'll get you back when some of those fancy things come with the bus getting a leg up on the traffic and the VRT system becomes real.
We'd love to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show and invite you to the next show. Take care and have a great week. Bye-bye.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.